Hi, I'm Sarah Black, and this is for Adolescent Intervention. I am going to be talking about my adolescence. I began my adolescence in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I was in the 6th grade. This is the age that I began smoking. I learned about boys and became friends with kids that were probably not the best of influences on me. I relate so much to the movie 13. I was not as wild as the girls in the movie, but I was pretty close at that age. I was born without a thyroid, despite having taken Synthroid since I was 6 weeks old. I've always been a bigger person. I was consistently bullied for my size. This made my self-esteem very low. The friends that I hung out with accepted me, and therefore I didn't care what kind of people they actually were. This continued through the 7th grade. I still attended Christian County Middle School. I met a new friend, and she was large like me. Because of her size, she was bullied as well. Fellow classmates decided to start a rumor that she was gay, which was false. When I started hanging out with her and spending the night at her home, which is normal for a child that age, they started calling me the same thing. And it was very unfair because we were not gay. We were just friends. But it's because I guess they found us so disgusting that they decided that the rumor was funny. My parents are very conservative. They do not indulge in substances, curse, or act inappropriately. This made these years of my life that much more difficult. I was always at odds with them. Prior to middle school, I was a very sweet and naive child. The summer after 7th grade, my dad wanted to move closer to the business that he had bought. We decided to move to Paris, Tennessee. My parents bought a house. I was very upset. I was in the middle of puberty. I wasn't going to like Tennessee. I had no friends there. Despite my opposition, we moved. I remember the first day of school in Paris. Other kids introduced themselves, and I figured they were just being fake because I wasn't used to that. No one was that nice to me so far in life at school. They were sincere. I never got bullied. I met a group of girls that invited me to eat lunch with them. A bunch of girls liked the same music I liked. It was just strange, but it was great. My parents moved to the country club area in Paris, which is known for being a higher socioeconomic neighborhood. We were very comfortable because my dad owned his own business. This made me happy, and I ended up feeling the need to fulfill this fantasy that we were rich at the time. We had never had the money that we had at this time. Dad had been in the military when I was little, and then he worked different sales jobs, and he ended up buying a business from the company he worked for. So I would ask my mom for the more expensive clothing and shoes that other kids were wearing, like Abercrombie and Doc Martens, and she would usually indulge me. This, in retrospect, did me no favors. I grew up the next few years thinking I had to dress like the other kids in school to be considered cool. I would actually, shame my mom if she didn't buy me what I wanted, and she would inevitably give in, which was not great. Again, as a mom now, not a good thing. By high school, I had had several friends. We weren't the popular kids or preps, but I was always happy. I always had nice clothing, so it gave me more self-confidence. Even though I was heavy, I joined the band, the choir. I was also in love with a guy that ended up coming out as gay in 11th grade. This was my first big crush. I had been in love with him since I moved to Paris. So that was a difficult blow for me when I found out that he had come out. I graduated at 17 and moved to Murray State. It was the first time ever being out of my parents' house. It was very sheltered growing up, so I kind of went crazy. I went to a lot of parties and very few classes. I spent a lot of money, or my parents' money, charging it. I drove to my sister's house a lot because there were a lot of guys around who gave me attention where she lived, and helped her with my nephew at the time. I ended up staying one semester at Murray, and I left because I just wasn't ready for college. My parents decided. I got academic probation, and at Christmas it was not fun because they were very unhappy. Then I was about 18, and I moved in with my sister and started working at her restaurant. She and her husband own a Mexican restaurant, and I started working there. I tend to call these days my sexual revolution because I had really low self-worth because of college not panning out, and I was large and never really got much attention in high school from guys, and I felt my life would never amount to anything, so I slept around a lot. I knew some guys' names, some I didn't. I was only 18 years old, and I feel like even though I approved of it at the time and it was consensual, I feel like I was taken advantage of. 2003, I was still 18, and I met my now ex-husband. At the time, I felt like he really liked me. He treated me with respect that I didn't get from the other guys. He's American. Most of the other guys were illegals. Roger was American. Born in California, raised in Texas. He was very charismatic, caring at the time, I thought. I was 18 and he was 21, and I was in love. I spent all of my time with him. My sister threatened to kick me out of her house because I was never there, but I was too scared to tell my parents that I was going to live with him. He would put me in dangerous situations, like taking home his friends because he was too drunk to drive, and that anything could have happened when I was driving these strange guys home 30 minutes away. He was into drugs. I just didn't think about that kind of thing as bad. It was just something that was normal for me. He was my first real boyfriend. So I ended my adolescence living with my boyfriend and one of our other friends and coworkers, who was also a guy, who was my sister's brother-in-law. So we were really good friends. But I actually started back to college at 19, and life started going up from there. So I started off rough. It was rough for quite a few years. I didn't do myself any favors, and finally at the end of my adolescent years, the teen years, I kind of straightened out and decided I really need to go back to college. So I did. And that was my adolescence. Now, I think that emotional maturity and development really affected me. I was very attached to my parents. I was indulged quite a bit as a young child. However, even though I had a secure attachment to my mother, my father was gone quite often. And so, I feel like I maybe didn't have such a close relationship with my father, and I don't know if that really affected my self-esteem, and maybe gave me daddy issues, as they call them. I know, like I said, my physical development was affected by my health, and I was indulged quite a bit because I was the youngest. My social skills, they were always fine. I was able to make friends. I did have a self-esteem issue that led to maybe not making friends as easily and being more self-conscious. Like I said, I had, a close relationship with my mother. However, my mother always modeled to me, she was more comfortable hanging out with males, like her friends, and I've always been the same way. And then cognitively, my maturity and development, my parents both have college degrees, so they always pushed education, and I think I naturally rebelled against that as a child, and especially as an adolescent. I made okay grades, but I didn't care. I did good enough so that I didn't fail out. I usually made C's and B's because I was sick of them talking about college, and I think that may have been why I didn't care when I went to Murray, because it was always so ingrained in me. And when I got to a rebellious teenager, I didn't care anymore. And then the learning theory, I think really, the learning theory really applied to me because I think I kind of looked at others, especially my peers, in order to know how to act and what to do. And I was highly influenced as an adolescent to act and model my friends' behavior and everything. I don't know so much about like my personal style as a teenager. It fluctuated quite a bit. But socially, emotionally, and cognitively, like my best friend was in the top 5 of the class when I was a senior, and I tended to care more as a senior than I did before that. I said I was highly influenced by my peers, so I think the learning theory really comes into play with me. I modeled a lot from others. So, now for part 2, about what issues might be difficult for me as far as counseling an adolescent. I prefer to counsel adults, first of all, I will say. I just relate to them better because I am an adult. I can often find it difficult to counsel adolescents. I've had 18-year-olds in my caseload, and I guess because I haven't been 16 years, it's harder for me to relate to their issues. I try. I have nephews that are that age, but the issues I think will be most difficult for me in counseling an adolescent would be bullying, drug use, abuse, and neglect by a parental figure. Anything that just has to do with the child hurting or self-hurting themselves, or suicide. I guess because, like I said, I have nephews ranging from age 6 to age 18, and so 4 of them are teenagers right now, and my oldest son is going into 6th grade, so having to think about the fact that they could go through these situations, especially because of the fact that my son is in counseling, really bothers me. I would see them as my son or my nephews, and it would just really hurt my heart to hear the issues that they're going through, especially with, like I said, stemming from bullying, because it bothers me so very much that people are bullies, because I went through it as a child as well. So I think something like that, or hearing, I want to kill myself. I'm a 16-year-old, I'm going to kill myself because this other boy at school is calling me gay or stupid, or they humiliate me on a daily basis. Oh, my parents don't care. My parents neglect me. My parents are always at work, or, and I think that is what really bothers me the most. I am afraid of becoming that parent, and I'm afraid of my child becoming that teenager. So it makes me face my fears, which would actually be therapeutic for me, because I would learn better how to handle that situation if it came into my personal life. So it may be something I need to explore more. The types of adolescence that might be most difficult for me would be like a teenager with, like I said, suicidal ideation, because I just don't want something to happen bad to a child. And I look at those children like they are my family, because I love kids, and I don't want them to hurt, and I want to take them home and adopt them. So having to think about, oh God, they're in pain emotionally. I can handle an adult, because I would relate them to myself a lot of times, but as a child, I just can't see a reason to end it all. There's got to be some alternative, no matter what. As an adult as well, but I'm just saying, especially as a child. I think children with maybe oppositional defiant disorder. I have dealt with younger children, not adolescents, in that, with that disorder, and it's just very frustrating. I really just come to a loss of words, and I just don't know how to react to them sometimes, because they end up throwing fits, and I just kind of get shocked and walk away. So I don't think I can handle a child with ODD. I think antisocial personality disorder, even though it's not diagnosed as a child, a lot of children I've met that have ODD, I believe, are headed that direction, and that scares me. I don't have a lot of training in that disorder, so I would not feel that comfortable dealing with somebody that had ODD, and I felt like they would eventually be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Not that they're specifically linked, but in children with ODD, or mood regulation disorder or conduct disorder, I see a lot of traits of antisocial personality disorder. It's just true. And it would scare me to deal with those people, because a lot of them, there's no rehabbing them. They have no conscience, I feel. How might my experiences be helpful for me in my counseling of adolescents? Well, as I said, I am a mother of 2 children, and I have 5 nephews. And I have a lot of experience with talking to and dealing with adolescents and children. My nephew is 18, and for 2 years he lived with us. And he had a lot of social and emotional issues. He went to counseling for a while, and I talked through a lot of them. I actually went to the emergency room one time when he was feeling suicidal. So I recall my sister called me. It was at her house, and she said Devin's girlfriend sent her a message saying that he wanted to die, and please come over and help her, talk to him. So I did. It was my first year at grad school, so, she, I guess, thought I knew something more than she would know to say to him. So I went over there, and I spoke to him for a while, and he maintained that he was not going to hurt himself, but he couldn't promise that later he would not. So we went ahead and went to the hospital, and they came out from actually where I work now and did an assessment on him. And after that, he hated his mother, and he broke up with his girlfriend, and he came and stayed with us. And I don't really know if that was negative or positive, but he felt that they were both toxic, and he didn't want to be around that anymore. And the fact that I came over and I wanted to help him, I think he saw that as a positive thing. You know, I love him. I want to take care of him and make sure he's okay. And another thing, in my experience, a lot of people come to me for advice. And I feel like I usually give good advice. And so talking to somebody about their issues is something that I am just used to doing. So I think, especially at that age, like I said, because I have several nephews, so I tend to try to talk to them about their issues when I'm around them. So I believe that experience is helpful in counseling, because I'm used to being around kids that age. What population do I think I will relate to best? Probably an older teenager. Even though it was said earlier that it's been 16 years since I was that age. That's true. However, I think I would relate more with them because they have a more mature way of thinking than a younger adolescent. It's often difficult for me to deal with a younger adolescent because they have the immature way of thinking, and I just don't have that immature, I try to act as if, I'm their buddy or something, and I just come off as some lame middle-aged woman who tries to act cool and give them high fives. It just doesn't work out. So I think 17, 18, 19 would be the age that I could relate to the most. Like I said, I have difficulty dealing with them because I don't always understand them. And that's why I counsel adults. However, if I were to counsel adolescents, it would be the older adolescents I would prefer. So, absolutely. Alright, thank you for listening to my presentation this evening.